The glass tower of Hayes Global Industries pierced the morning sky like a crystal dagger. Inside, on the 32nd floor, Natalie Brooks had already been working for 3 hours before most employees arrived. Her desk sat outside the corner office, a position she had held for 18 months. At 27, she had learned to read the moods of Vincent Hayes better than anyone else in the building. Vincent Hayes was not a man who smiled easily. At 42, he had built his empire from absolutely nothing. Starting with a single patent for industrial automation software that he had developed in a rented basement apartment, now, Hayes Global Industries employed over 5,000 people across 12 countries. The journey had hardened him, turned him into someone who saw weakness as unacceptable and emotion as a liability. Natalie understood this about him. She had watched him work 16-hour days, skip meals, and push himself to the edge of exhaustion. She had also seen the man beneath the armor, though he rarely let it show. The way his eyes softened when he received letters from the scholarship students his private foundation supported. The slight pause in his step when he passed the photo of his late parents in the hallway. These tiny glimpses of humanity kept her going when his demands seemed impossible. The pressure builds today was different. The Singapore investors were arriving at 2 in the afternoon, and this meeting could secure the Asian expansion that Vincent had been planning for 2 years. The contract was worth $400 million, but more than that. It represented validation of everything he had built. Natalie had prepared every detail. The presentation slides were perfect, the financial projections reviewed 3 times. The conference room arranged exactly as Vincent preferred. She had even ensured his favorite brand of mineral water was available, the kind that had to be specially imported and cost more per bottle than most people spent on lunch. Jordan Mitchell arrived at 11. His easygoing manner, a stark contrast to Vincent's intensity. As business partner and best friend since college, Jordan was one of the few people who could talk sense into Vincent when his perfectionism spiraled out of control. "Morning," Natalie, Jordan said warmly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He placed one on her desk without being asked. This small kindness was typical of Jordan, and it reminded Natalie that decent people still existed in this world of corporate warfare. "Thank you, Jordan." He is already reviewing the materials for the 5th time. Jordan shook his head with a knowing smile. "Of course he is. Has he eaten anything today?" He refused breakfast. "I have lunch scheduled for 12:30, but you know how he gets before big meetings." "Do indeed. Wish me luck." Natalie watched Jordan disappear into the office, hearing the low murmur of their conversation through the thick door. She returned to her work, cross-referencing the legal documents one final time. Everything had to be perfect. Vincent accepted nothing less. When perfect is not enough. Fat 145. 15 minutes before the investors were scheduled to arrive, Natalie received an urgent call from building security. There was a problem with the visitor parking passes. The system had somehow failed to register the guests properly, and without the correct authorization, the security protocols would delay their entry to the building. Her heart rate quickened. Vincent had been explicit about every detail running smoothly. She made 3 rapid phone calls, speaking with security, IT, building management simultaneously using her desk phone and mobile. Within 8 minutes, she had resolved the issue, created temporary passes, and ensured the investors would experience no delay. But those 8 minutes cost her something else. In her focused rush to solve the crisis, she had not immediately informed Vincent of the problem. She had chosen to fix it first, report it second. This decision would prove catastrophic. The investors arrived exactly on time. 3 distinguished gentlemen from Singapore, led by the formidable Mr. Tan Wei Ming, whose reputation for thorough due diligence was legendary. Natalie greeted them with practiced warmth, offering refreshments and making small conversation that put them at ease. Vincent emerged from his office, Jordan beside him. He was impeccable as always in a navy suit that cost more than some cars, his dark hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes sharp and assessing. He shook hands with each investor, his smile professional but not quite reaching his eyes. The meeting began well. Vincent's presentation was flawless, his command of the details impressive. Jordan added humor and warmth to balance Vincent's intensity. The investors asked intelligent questions. The responses clearly satisfied them. Then Mr. Tan asked about security protocols, given the sensitive nature of the technology they would be licensing. It was a reasonable question, one they had anticipated. But as Vincent began to answer, Mr. Tan mentioned something unexpected. We appreciate that your building security was so responsive when there was that issue with our parking authorization. Quick thinking prevented any delay. Vincent's expression did not change, but Natalie saw the slight tension in his jaw. That tiny muscle that only appeared when he was controlling anger. The meeting continued, but she knew. She knew that storm was coming. The eruption, 2 hours later, the investors departed, pleased with the meeting and promising a decision within the week. Jordan clapped Vincent on the shoulder, congratulating him on a presentation well done. But as soon as the elevator doors closed on their guests, Vincent turned to Natalie. My office. Now. His voice was quiet. That was worse than shouting. Natalie followed him inside, her stomach knotting with dread. Close the door. She did. Vincent stood behind his massive desk, his hands pressed flat against the polished surface. When he looked up, his eyes were cold as winter sea. There was a security issue with the parking passes. An issue that could have delayed our investors, made us look unprofessional, and jeopardized a $400 million deal. And you did not think to inform me immediately? Mr. Hayes, I resolved the problem within 8 minutes. I did not want to distract you before such an important meeting. You made a decision that was not yours to make. You decided what information I needed to know. You decided to keep me ignorant of a potential crisis. That is not fair. I handled the situation effectively. Words escaped before she could stop them. In 18 months, she had never contradicted him directly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Fair. Vincent's voice was dangerously soft. You want to talk to me about fair? I have built this company through absolute control of every detail. I have succeeded because I know everything, anticipate everything, prepare for everything. And you, who I trusted to be my eyes and ears, decided to hide information from me. I was protecting you from unnecessary stress. I do not need protection. I need competence. I need someone who understands that in my organization, I am informed of everything immediately, regardless of whether the problem is solved. Natalie felt something crack inside her chest. 18 months of early mornings and late nights. 18 months of canceled plans and missed birthdays because he needed her. 18 months of being excellent, being invisible, being everything he required. And now this. You're right, Mr. Hayes. You deserve an assistant who meets your standards. Unfortunately, that person is no longer me. She removed her security badge from around her neck and placed it on his desk with a soft click. What are you doing? I quit. Effective immediately. You can have someone from HR pack my belongings and send them to me. Vincent stared at her as if she had spoken a language he did not understand. You cannot quit in the middle of the workday. We have the Anderson call at 4, and tomorrow morning, find someone else. You're Vincent Hayes. You can do anything, remember? She walked toward the door, her hand surprisingly steady as she reached for the handle. Natalie. His voice stopped her, but she did not turn around. If you walk out that door, do not bother coming back. I would not dream of it. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. Jordan emerged from the conference room, his eyes widening as he saw her gathering her purse and coat. Natalie, what? Goodbye, Jordan. You are a good man. I hope you remember that. She walked to the elevator with her head high, even though her hands were shaking. Behind her, she heard Vincent's office door slam with enough force to rattle the windows. The sound echoed through the entire floor, and every employee froze, their faces reflecting shock and something else. Respect, perhaps, for the woman who had finally stood up to the impossible Vincent Hayes as the elevator descended. Carrying her away from 18 months of her life, Natalie Brooks allowed herself one quiet sob. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and stepped out into the afternoon sun. She did not look back at the glass tower. She did not know that in his office Vincent Hayes stood at the window, watching her small figure disappear into the crowded street below, feeling something he had not felt in years: regret. The first week without Natalie Brooks felt like a minor inconvenience to Vincent Hayes. He told himself that assistants were replaceable, No single person was indispensable to his empire. He had HR send up 3 candidates within 24 hours of her departure. Each one lasted less than 2 days. The first could not understand his filing system. The second burst into tears when he asked her to reschedule a meeting for the 4th time. The third simply disappeared during lunch break and never returned, leaving behind only a half-eaten salad and a resignation email that read simply, "I cannot do this." By the second week, Vincent stopped pretending this was normal. His coffee tasted wrong because nobody knew he preferred it at exactly 170 degrees. It's hot enough to drink immediately, but not scalding. His morning briefings were incomplete because nobody understood which news sources he prioritized. His schedule became a disaster because nobody remembered that he needed 15 minutes between meetings to review notes. Not the standard 5 minutes HR kept scheduling. Jordan watched this unraveling with a mixture of concern and something that looked suspiciously like satisfaction. On Friday of the second week, he entered Vincent's office without knocking, a privilege he rarely exercised. "You look terrible," Jordan said bluntly, settling into the chair across from Vincent's desk. "Thank you for that insightful observation. Was there something you actually needed? I need you to admit you made a mistake." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I have made no mistake. She chose to quit. Gave her no choice. You dressed her down for solving a problem efficiently and independently. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like a man who is looking for an excuse to push away someone who is getting too close. That is ridiculous. She was my assistant, nothing more." Jordan leaned forward, his expression serious. "Vincent, I have known you since we were 19 years old. I was there when your parents died. I was there when you built this company from nothing. And I have never seen you as dependent on another person as you were on Natalie. That terrified you, so you sabotaged it. Your amateur psychology is neither helpful nor accurate. Then explain to me why you are currently on your 4th assistant in 2 weeks. Explain why your sister called me yesterday asking if you were having a breakdown. Explain why the Singapore deal almost fell apart because you forgot to send the follow-up materials that Natalie would have sent automatically." Vincent stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Below, thousands of people moved through their lives, unaware and unconcerned with his problems. "I saved the Singapore deal." "You did?" "By working until 3 in the morning to recreate work that should have been done automatically. This is not sustainable, and you know it." The silence stretched between them. Finally, Vincent spoke, his voice quieter than before. "She said, I was unfair. Nobody has called me unfair in 15 years, maybe because she was the first person brave enough to tell you the truth. You have surrounded yourself with people who are afraid of you, Vincent. That is not strength. That is loneliness disguised as power." Jordan left, and Vincent remained at the window long after the sun set over the city he had conquered. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the weight of his isolation. Natalie's new beginning across the city. In a modest apartment in Brooklyn, Natalie Brooks was discovering what freedom felt like. The first few days after quitting had been difficult. She had cried, questioned her decision, and worried about her finances. But then something unexpected happened. Her phone rang with an opportunity she had never anticipated. Carolyn Hayes, Vincent's younger sister, wanted to meet for coffee. Natalie had met Caroline only twice during her time at Hayes Global. But the younger woman had always been warm and genuine. The opposite of her brother in many ways. They met at a small cafe in the West Village. Far from the corporate towers and power lunches of Natalie's former life, Caroline was 35, with the same dark hair as her brother, but with eyes that held kindness instead of ice. "I heard what happened," Caroline said without preamble. "My brother is an idiot." Natalie could not help but laugh. "That is a generous assessment. He has always been this way. After our parents died in that car accident, Vincent decided that caring about people was dangerous. He threw himself into building the company, and somewhere along the way, he forgot how to be human." Caroline stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "But I did not ask you here to discuss my brother's emotional limitations. I asked you here because I have a proposal." Natalie listened as Caroline explained her vision. For 3 years, Caroline had been developing a nonprofit organization. It's focused on providing technology education to underprivileged communities. She had the passion and the connections. but she lacked someone with corporate experience to help structure the organization and manage its rapid growth. "I cannot pay you what Vincent did," Carolyn admitted, "but I can offer you something he never could. The chance to do work that actually matters? To help people instead of just making rich people richer." The offer was tempting, but Natalie hesitated. "Why me?" "You could hire someone with more nonprofit experience." "Because I watched how you handled my brother. Anyone who can manage Vincent Hayes for 18 months has skills that go beyond what any resume can show. You are organized, unflappable, and you actually care about people. That is exactly what I need." Natalie accepted the position that afternoon. Within 3 weeks, she had streamlined Caroline's operations, secured 2 major grants, and established partnerships with 4 schools in underserved neighborhoods. The work was challenging, but fulfilling in ways her previous job had never been. She thought about Vincent sometimes, usually late at night when the city was quiet. She wondered if he had found a suitable replacement, if he even remembered her name. She told herself it did not matter. She had moved on to something better, but her heart knew she was lying. The crisis nobody saw coming 6 weeks after Natalie's departure. Disaster struck Hayes Global Industries. Robert Chen, the senior board member who had always questioned Vincent's aggressive expansion strategies, called for an emergency board meeting. He had discovered discrepancies in the financial projections for the Asian expansion. Discrepancies that suggested someone had been inflating the numbers to make the deal look more attractive. Vincent knew he was innocent. But the optics were devastating. The Singapore investors immediately placed the deal on hold pending investigation. Stock prices dropped 8% in a single day. The media, always hungry for stories of corporate scandal, began circling like sharks. Jordan worked alongside Vincent day and night, combing through every document, every email, every financial model. They needed to find the source of the false information and prove Vincent's integrity. The company's future depended on it. On the 3rd night of their investigation, exhausted and desperate, Vincent made a discovery. The inflated projections had come from a report prepared by his temporary assistant during the 2nd week after Natalie left. The assistant had misunderstood his instructions and accidentally used preliminary estimates instead of verified figures. It was an honest mistake, but one that had spiraled into a catastrophe. "Natalie would never have made this error," Vincent said quietly. Staring at the damning report on his screen, Jordan looked up from his laptop, his eyes red from lack of sleep. No, she would not have. She would have double-checked everything, caught the mistake before it went anywhere near the investors. Vincent felt something crack in his chest, a feeling he had been avoiding for 6 weeks. "I destroyed my company because I could not admit I needed her." "You have not destroyed anything yet. But you need to fix this, Vincent. And I do not just mean the financial crisis. I mean everything." The solution came from an unexpected source. Caroline called Vincent at midnight, her voice tight with urgency. "I just saw the news about the board investigation. Natalie thinks she might be able to help." Vincent's heart stopped. "Natalie is with you?" "She has been working for my nonprofit for 5 weeks. She is brilliant, Vincent, and she is wasted on my small operation. But more importantly, she remembers details about the Asian expansion project that might prove your innocence." "Why would she help me after what I did?" Caroline's voice softened. "Because despite everything, she still believes in the good person buried underneath your terrible personality. Do not make her regret that belief." The investigation deepens 2 days later. Vincent sat in a conference room with his lawyers, Jordan and Robert Chen. The atmosphere was hostile. The accusations barely veiled. Chen wanted Vincent removed as CEO, wanted to install new leadership before the company's reputation was irreparably damaged. Then the door opened, and Natalie Brooks walked in. She looked different. Her hair was styled in loose waves instead of the severe bun she used to wear. Her clothing was more relaxed, a simple but elegant navy dress instead of the rigid corporate suits. But her eyes held the same intelligence, the same determination that Vincent remembered. "Ms. Brooks," Robert Chen said with surprise, "what are you doing here?" "I was Mr. Hayes' assistant for 18 months. I've maintained copies of all critical documents and correspondence as part of my standard protocol. I believe I have evidence that will clarify this situation." She opened her laptop with steady hands, and Vincent saw that she had brought her personal backup files. The meticulous record she had kept of every meeting, every decision, every document that crossed his desk during her tenure. For the next 2 hours, Natalie walked the board through a comprehensive timeline. She showed that the original projections Vincent had approved were accurate and conservative. She demonstrated how the error occurred during the transition period after her departure. She even had emails proving that Vincent had questioned the inflated numbers when he first saw them, but had been assured by the temporary assistant that they were correct. Her presentation was flawless. Her command of the details absolute. This was the Natalie that Vincent remembered, except now she was using her considerable talents to save him rather than serve him. When she finished, Robert Chin sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. This is compelling evidence. Ms. Brooks, the question remains why someone with your obvious capabilities is no longer employed by this company. Natalie met Vincent's eyes for the first time since entering the room. That is a question you should ask Mr. Hayes. The meeting adjourned with the investigation effectively concluded. Vincent was cleared of wrongdoing, and the board agreed to issue a statement, restoring confidence in his leadership. The Singapore deal would proceed once the corrected projections were submitted. Vincent had one. His company was saved, his reputation intact. But as he watched Natalie pack her laptop preparing to leave, he realized he had lost something far more valuable. The words that should have been spoken, Natalie. Wait. She paused at the door, her hand on the handle, not turning around. The gesture reminded Vincent painfully of the day she had quit. Why did you do this? After everything I said, after how I treated you, why did you come back to help me? She turned then, and he saw something in her eyes that made his chest ache. Not anger, not resentment. Something softer and infinitely more painful. Because I know who you really are, Vincent. I know about the scholarship foundation you run anonymously. I know you visit your parents' graves every Sunday morning before anyone else is awake. I know you donated $500,000 to the children's hospital where your mother volunteered. I know that underneath the cold exterior is someone who cares deeply but is afraid to show it. How did I was your assistant for 18 months. Did you really think I did not notice? I saw you, Vincent. The real you. And that person deserved to be defended, even if the person he pretends to be did not. Vincent felt something shift inside him, like ice beginning to thaw after a long winter. I was wrong. About everything. The way I spoke to you that day was unforgivable. You made a judgment call that protected me in the meeting, and instead of thanking you, I punished you for it. Yes, you did. I have been miserable without you. The company has been chaos. My life has been disordered, and I have been too proud to admit that I need you. Not just as an assistant, but as someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Natalie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Vincent, I cannot come back just to be your assistant. I deserve more than that. I deserve to work somewhere my contributions are valued, where I am treated with respect, where I matter as a person and not just a function. You are absolutely right, which is why I am not asking you to come back as my assistant. He took a breath, preparing to take the biggest risk of his life. Not a financial risk or a business gamble, but something far more terrifying. An emotional one. Come back as my partner. Not business partner, not assistant, but someone I build something with. Someone whose opinions I trust, whose judgment I value, whose presence makes everything better. Come back and help me remember how to be human again. The silence stretched between them, filled with possibility and fear and hope. Natalie smiled, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Ask me again in 6 months. Ask me when you've proven that you can change, that you can be the person I believe you are capable of being. If you can do that, Vincent Hayes, then maybe we can talk about partnerships. She left, and this time Vincent did not watch her go with regret. He watched her with determination. He had 6 months to become the man worthy of Natalie Brooks. The real work was just beginning. Vincent Hayes had rebuilt companies, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and conquered markets that others thought impossible. But nothing in his accomplished life had prepared him for the challenge of rebuilding himself. The first change was small but significant. He began saying thank you. To the security guard who held the door, to the coffee shop worker who knew his order, to Jordan, who had been his loyal friend through everything. The words felt awkward at first, like speaking a foreign language. They became easier with practice. The second change was harder. He hired a therapist, something he had always dismissed as weakness. Dr. Patricia Monroe was 60 years old with silver hair and eyes that saw through every defense mechanism he tried to employ. Their weekly sessions were brutal, forcing him to confront the walls he had built after his parents' death. The fear of attachment that had driven away everyone who tried to get close. You equate emotional connection with loss, Dr. Monroe told him during their 8th session. Your parents died suddenly, and you decided that caring deeply about anyone was inviting pain. So you built an empire instead of relationships, because companies cannot abandon you. That is an oversimplification, Vincent protested. Is it? Tell me about Natalie Brooks. Her name still caused an ache in his chest. What about her? You speak about business associates with detachment, board members with strategy, investors with calculation, but when you mention her name, your voice changes. Your entire demeanor shifts. She terrifies you because she matters, and mattering means vulnerability. Vincent stared out the window of Dr. Monroe's office, watching the city below. I do not know how to be vulnerable. I do not know how to care about someone without trying to control everything. Then you learn. One small step at a time. And Vincent, you are running out of time if you want to show her you have changed. The third change was public. Vincent established the Brooks Initiative, a corporate program that provided full scholarships and mentorship to underprivileged students pursuing technology careers. He named it after Natalie, not to win her back, but because she had inspired the idea during one of their early morning conversations he had pretended not to pay attention to. When the announcement went public, his phone rang within an hour. It was Caroline. The Brooks Initiative. Really, Vincent? That is either the most romantic gesture I have ever seen, or the most manipulative. I cannot decide which. It is neither. It is the right thing to do. Something I should have done years ago. She knows about it. I told her this morning. Vince's heart raced. What did she say? She cried. Then she asked if you were doing this just to impress her, or because you genuinely care about helping people. What do you think? Caroline was quiet for a moment. I think my brother is finally becoming the man our parents raised him to be. I think you are finding your way back to yourself. And Vincent, I am proud of you. Those words meant more than any business success ever had. Natalie's journey. Forward while Vincent worked on transforming himself. Natalie was thriving in ways she had never imagined. Caroline's nonprofit had grown exponentially under her management. They had expanded from 4 schools to 23, established partnerships with major technology companies, and secured funding that would sustain their programs for the next 5 years. But more than professional success, Natalie had found peace. She no longer woke up with anxiety about whether she had anticipated every possible crisis. She no longer spent her evenings preparing for the next day's impossible demands. She laughed more, relaxed more, remembered who she was beyond the role of indispensable assistant. She also dated, though nothing serious developed. There was Marcus, a kind teacher from one of their partner schools, who took her to poetry readings and made her laugh. There was David, a corporate lawyer who understood the demands of high-pressure careers. Both were good men, but neither made her heart race the way Vincent Hayes once had. She hated that she still thought about him. Hated that she searched for news about Hayes Global Industries, reading articles about the Brooks Initiative and the changes happening within the company culture. Employees reported that Vincent had become more approachable, more human. The turnover rate had dropped significantly. People actually wanted to work for him now. Still love him, Carolyn said one afternoon as they reviewed grant applications in the nonprofit's small office. Natalie did not bother denying it. Love is not enough. He needs to prove he has changed, that this is not just temporary effort to win me back. He has been in therapy for 5 months. He volunteers at the youth center every Saturday morning, teaching coding to teenagers. He remembered my birthday for the first time in 8 years and actually showed up to dinner. Vincent is trying, Natalie. Trying and succeeding are different things. I gave him 6 months. He still has 3 weeks. But even as she said it, Natalie felt the walls around her heart beginning to crack. The crisis that changed everything with 2 weeks remaining in the 6-month deadline. Disaster struck in the most unexpected way. Caroline collapsed during a site visit to one of their schools. The diagnosis came swiftly and brutally, a brain aneurysm that required immediate surgery. The prognosis was uncertain, the risks significant. Natalie sat in the hospital waiting room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, praying to a God she was not sure she believed in. Jordan arrived first, his face pale with worry. Then came friends, colleagues, board members from the nonprofit. And then Vincent walked through the door. He looked different than the man, she remembered. His expensive suit was rumpled, as if he had thrown it on hastily. His hair was disheveled. His eyes held genuine fear, the kind of raw emotion she had never seen him display. "How is she?" His voice cracked slightly. "In surgery. They said it will take several hours." Vincent sat down beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that she could feel his presence. They sat in silence for a long moment before he spoke again. "I have not been a good brother to her. After our parents died, I was so focused on building the company, on proving I could succeed, that I neglected the one family I had left. She called me on birthdays, invited me to holidays, tried to maintain a relationship, and I was always too busy. Always had something more important to do." Natalie reached over and took his hand. The gesture was instinctive, offering comfort in a moment of shared fear. His fingers closed around hers, holding tight. "She loves you, Vincent. She talks about you all the time. About how proud she is of the changes you have made, how she sees glimpses of the brother she remembers from before your parents died. I do not deserve her forgiveness. I do not deserve yours either. But I am asking for it anyway because I cannot imagine my life without both of you in it." The surgery lasted 7 hours. During that time, Vincent and Natalie talked more honestly than they ever had. He told her about therapy, about the painful process of examining his choices and admitting his failures. She told him about her work with the nonprofit, about finding purpose beyond corporate success. "The Brooks Initiative," she said softly. "Why did you really create it?" "Because you were right. About everything. I have spent 15 years making money and building power, but I have not spent a single day making the world better. You did that naturally, effortlessly. I wanted to learn how. I wanted to honor the person who showed me there was more to life than balance sheets and shareholder value. It has helped so many kids already. 37 students received full scholarships this year. 39, actually. We added 2 more last week." He smiled slightly. "I know because I met with each of them personally. Heard their stories, learned about their dreams. One girl wants to develop affordable medical technology for rural communities. Another wants to create educational software for children with learning disabilities. They reminded me why I fell in love with technology in the first place. Not for profit, but for possibility." The surgeon finally emerged at 11 that night. Caroline had survived, and the operation had been successful. She would need time to recover, but the prognosis was good. Natalie felt tears of relief streaming down her face, and Vincent's arms wrapped around her in a hug that felt like coming home. The morning after, Natalie woke in an uncomfortable hospital chair, her neck stiff and her body aching. Sunlight streamed through the waiting room windows, and she realized she had fallen asleep against Vincent's shoulder. He was still there, his own eyes closed, his breathing steady. She studied his face in the morning light. The sharp angles softened by sleep, the lines of stress less pronounced. He looked younger, more like the person he might have been if grief had not hardened him so thoroughly. His eyes opened, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Good morning. I want to show you something. If you are willing to take a walk with me?" They checked on Caroline first. She was awake, weak, but smiling, insisting they stop hovering and go get breakfast. Vincent kissed his sister's forehead with a tenderness that made Natalie's heart ache. Outside, the city was just waking up. Vincent led her through familiar streets until they reached a small park she had never noticed before. Hidden between buildings in a neighborhood that had once been industrial, but was now being revitalized. In the center of the park stood a new community center, its modern design blending beautifully with the surrounding historic architecture. A sign out front read, Brooks Community Technology Center, opening next month. What is this? Natalie whispered. A partnership between Hayes Global Industries and your nonprofit. A place where kids from underserved communities can access computers, take coding classes, get tutoring, and dream bigger than their circumstances. Carolyn and I have been planning it for 2 months. It was supposed to be a surprise for your 6-month deadline. Vincent, this must have cost millions. 4.2 million, actually. But money I have. What I did not have was purpose. You gave me that. You and Caroline both showed me that success means nothing if it does not lift others up alongside you. Natalie walked to the center's entrance, looking through the glass doors at the state-of-the-art computer lab, the bright classrooms, the comfortable reading areas. Her vision blurred with tears. There is something else, Vincent said, his voice nervous in a way she had never heard before. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a formal document. As she read it, her hands began to shake. It was a contract offering her the position of Chief Impact Officer at Hayes Global Industries, a newly created executive role focused on corporate social responsibility and community engagement. The salary was substantial, but more importantly, the authority was real. She would have full control over the Brooks Initiative, the community center, and all future philanthropic programs. This is not asking you to be my assistant again, Vincent said. This is asking you to be my conscience, my guide to becoming the kind of company that does well by doing good. This is asking you to be an equal partner in reshaping what Hayes Global Industries stands for. I do not know what to say. Then let me say something first. He took her hands in his, and she saw that his were trembling slightly. 6 months ago, you told me to prove I could change. I have tried. I have failed sometimes, succeeded others, but I have tried every single day to become someone worthy of you. Not because I wanted to win you back like some prize, but because you made me want to be better. You made me remember that beneath the armor I built was someone capable of caring, of connecting, of loving. Vincent, I am in love with you, Natalie Brooks. I think I have been since the morning you brought me coffee made exactly right without me ever telling you how I preferred it. Since the day you stayed until midnight, helping me prepare for a presentation without complaint. Since every moment you saw past my worst behavior to something better underneath. I am in love with you, and I am terrified because loving someone means risking loss. And I have spent 15 years protecting myself from exactly that risk. But you are worth it. You are worth every fear, every vulnerability, every moment of uncertainty. Natalie felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. You are an impossible man, Vincent Hayes. Demanding, difficult, stubborn, beyond reason. I know. I am working on it. Dr. Monroe says I am making progress, though slowly. But you are also brilliant and capable of remarkable change. And underneath all that carefully constructed coldness is someone with a genuinely good heart. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I am in love with you too. I have been for longer than I wanted to admit, certainly longer than was professionally appropriate. I told myself it was just admiration, just respect for your intelligence and drive. But the truth is, I saw who you really were, and I fell in love with that person, even when you were trying desperately to hide him from the world. So is that a yes to the job offer? She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. That is a yes to everything. The job, the partnership, and the terrifying, wonderful possibility of building something real together. Vincent pulled her into his arms, and when he kissed her, it felt like every barrier between them finally crumbled. This was not the impossible boss and the long-suffering assistant. This was two people who had found each other despite every obstacle, who had grown and changed and fought their way to this moment. 6 months later, the ending that was really a beginning. Grand opening of the Brooks Community Technology Center was covered by every major news outlet. Vincent gave a speech about corporate responsibility and community investment, but everyone noticed how his eyes kept finding Natalie in the crowd, how his serious expression softened whenever he looked at her. Natalie spoke about opportunity and access, about believing in potential regardless of circumstance. 30 students from the first Brooks Initiative Scholarship Program sat in the front row. Living proof that investment in people changed lives, Caroline. Fully recovered and back to her energetic self. Beamed with pride as she cut the ribbon alongside her brother and Natalie. The center would serve over 500 students in its first year, a number that would only grow. That evening, at a private celebration in Vincent's penthouse apartment that had been transformed from a cold showpiece into an actual home with warmth and personality, Jordan raised his glass in a toast to Vincent Hayes, who finally learned that being strong enough to be vulnerable is true power. To Natalie Brooks, who saw potential in an impossible man and refused to give up on it, in 2-second chances, which are really just first chances for becoming who we were always meant to be. Vincent pulled Natalie close, kissing the top of her head. She wore an engagement ring now, a simple but beautiful design they had chosen together. The wedding was planned for spring, a small ceremony focused on the people who actually mattered rather than the social climbing and business networking. That would have characterized the old Vincent's choices. You, he whispered against her hair. For what? For quitting? For coming back? For believing I could change? For loving me, even when I was unlovable? For everything. She turned in his arms, her smile radiant. Thank you for proving that people can change, that love is worth the risk, and that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. I fired you in a fit of anger, he said, echoing the words that had started their journey. I came back and changed your life, she finished. They kissed as their friends cheered. As the city sparkled outside the windows, as their future stretched before them filled with promise and possibility. Two people who had found each other, lost each other, and found their way back to something stronger than either had imagined. The story that began with an ending had become a beginning. And that, Natalie thought, as she looked into Vincent's eyes and saw her own happiness reflected there, was the most beautiful kind of story there was, the kind where broken people found ways to heal each other, where mistakes became lessons and lessons became wisdom, where love did not conquer all instantly, but grew stronger through trials and patience and genuine change, where an impossible man and the woman who refused to accept his impossibility built something extraordinary together. Not just a company or a foundation or a community center. Though they built all those things, they built a life. A real, messy, beautiful life filled with love and purpose and the knowledge that they were better together than they ever could have been apart. And in the end, that shocked everyone most of all, the end.